Welcome to the top M&A entrepreneurs. Today, my guest is Don Wilson. Don Wilson's out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's a Navy veteran and he's acquired 10 businesses. We're going to hear that story. Thanks for joining the show, Don.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, what did you do for the Navy for 10 years? It looks like you were,
Well, I started out in the naval aviation side of the Navy and worked my way up over a 10-year career, from one leadership position to the next. And ultimately, at the end of 10 years, I realized that I did not want to spend, another 10 years, traveling around the world on the flat tops. And with a family and be a father to my kids.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, my dad
So
was in the Air Force 20 years. I served 4 years in the Air Force, and he was gone a lot. He was gone a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's cool. Thank you for your service. So you went to go work for American Airlines, and you did that for 4 years, and then you worked for Primerica for a little bit. So what were you doing for Primerica that you didn't like it so well that you decided I'm going to go buy my own business?
Well, obviously, working in the airline industry, when I went to work for American Airlines, obviously I joined the Navy with the goal in mind of getting a license to work on aircraft. So that was my purpose of joining the Navy. So it took a lot longer than I anticipated to get that license. Because you have to have both airframe and power plant experience. And in the Navy, when you go into a rating, you're in that rating and you really, you kind of stay in that rating. So my rating in the Navy was metalsmith, basically working on the structures and the hydraulic systems and stuff like that. So you really didn't get to work on engines. So in order to get my engine experience, I had to re-enlist once or twice to get around the engines. And then I spent time away from my specialty. So I'd go to work normal hours, but when I got off, instead of going home, I went over to the engine shop and learned engines. So that's how I got my engine experience. And then obviously once I got the required number of things that they were looking for, which is like 36 months of experience, I took the test and passed that for A&P licensing.
All right. And then you went over to Primerica Financial Services. You worked there for 10 years.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I joined American Airlines, worked there for 3.5, almost 4 years, had a very good run there, learned a lot of valuable things. But the bottom line is I was a number, and my number was 318034. And that was my employee number. So when the day came that the airline, when they lay off people, they don't look at your experience, they look at your number. And so your number, your employee seniority date, they have a line and they draw that line. Anything below that line, you're out the door. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, so they treated me like a number. And I just, I had enough of that in the military, because you've got to play a lot of games in the military if you want to get promoted. So I left American Airlines for Primerica as a sales rep, learning how to sell financial products. And over that 10-year period, now that was not a job, that was an independent contractor position. So I had to learn that on 100% commission. So there was no income whatsoever. You had to go out and generate the income. So I learned sales, I learned managing. Obviously, I knew quite a bit about that in the military. But in Primerica, when you hire people, you don't put them on a salary. They come in 100% commission. So you have to train those people how to go out and make a living while they're learning the business.
Yeah, that did you design that? Say, hey, I need to get some sales experience under me if I'm going to go buy a business, and your ultimate
No,
goal? Or
not
was that
really. I
just,
mean, obviously, with the Primerica opportunity, when you join that company, you're an independent contractor. You're 1099 right off the bat. So, I just wanted to have, I wanted to be honest with you, I just wanted to replace the income that I had at American Airlines. I was making around $50,000 a year. And so I figured if I could go out and replace my $50,000 a year income, right, then I would be happy. Right. So once I hit the $50,000 income, I said, that's wonderful, but 100's better.
Yeah.
Right. So then I, got to the 100 mark. Well, 100's good, but 200's even better than that. And so you just kept working and working, building your team, building your organization. And over a period of time, it got pretty good. I mean, I did real well. I was in the top 2% of all out of 100,000 reps in the company. I was in the top 2%.
Yeah. So you were there for 10 years at Primerica.
Correct.
When did you start? What was the first one? The Billy Sims barbecue franchise acquisition or the candy, retail candy?
It was a retail store. So during my Primerica experience, I developed a lot of relationships with customers, my clients, and I was managing their money. And I had about $10 million under management. And so, I got to talk to guys, and one of my clients said he had a candy store that he was trying to sell. And I said, well, my son just went off to college. My wife's home. She's got nothing to do. She loves kids. So why not just buy that? So, I purchased my first retail business from a client.
And was he, when you say he was trying to sell it, was he trying to sell it through a broker side, biz buy sell, or was it off market?
No, he had it listed with a broker. So when he told me he had it, right, I said I was interested, and we got together, and he had to bring the broker in because he'd already started with a guy.
Yeah.
So I had to go deal with the broker, and all I wanted to see was the numbers. Show me the numbers. So I seen the numbers. I'm very good with numbers. I could do the math. I figured, okay, it makes about 50 grand a year. But he's had it for 2 years, and during those 2 years, he turned zero profit in 2 years. But I seen the profit. He didn't see it. I seen it. So I didn't.
You saw the profit in something that you could do, or you saw the profit where he wasn't financially doing the books right?
Well, I seen the profit where the guy he had running the store for him was pocketing the money.
Oh, okay. That's different. Yeah.
So, he wasn't physically running the store. He had other businesses, he was running, but this was just an idea for him to start this candy business. Right. And so anyway, long story short, I purchased that business, and I had about 30 grand in cash that I had, in my account that I could use. So I took that 30 grand and I parlayed that with a SBA loan from a lender. And then I had him carry, I don't know, 20,000, something like that, small amount, just to keep him, on the hook. And then I got in the business, put my wife in there. We both worked it for a little while till I learned it.
Was that guy fired? The guy fired that was
of course, first day.
Yeah, first thing, right? So what was the kind of multiple on a retail store, candy store in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Well, you got to look at the date. So this was back in 2004. So, so he wanted he was non-negotiable. He wanted 112,000. That was it. 112. And I said, okay, I'll give it to you. No problem. And so, like
how does somebody ask for $112,000 from a business not making money?
Basically, the way he arrived at that number, he added up all of his expenses to get that store open.
Oh, okay. So he was just trying to clear his expenses, and
he just wanted to get his money back. That's all he wanted, was get his money back.
All right.
Right. So anyway, long story short, we purchased the store, and within our first year, we cash flowed about 50,000 off of about 250,000. So we had 250,000 in revenue. We cash flowed about 50 grand.
Is that taking a salary? Were you guys taking a salary, or was that?
No, I took no salary. Wife got paid nothing. We just worked the business. We had 50 grand left in the bank at the end of the year. So we made about 50 grand.
All right. And then what'd you do? Grew it to 2 locations, selling a ton of bulk candy a week. That was amazing. Yeah.
So here's the deal. So obviously in that business, in a candy store, it has to be in a mall. You can't put a candy store out out in a strip center. It has to be in a mall, right? So
that's traffic. You need traffic. You need built-in traffic. Yeah.
You got to have kids, and you got to have lots of them. You got to have traffic. Okay. So my competitor in the bigger mall, I was in a smaller, there's 2 malls in Tulsa. So the bigger mall, actually there was 3, one went under. So the bigger mall was the Simon Mall, 1,000,000 square feet, big, big place. His store, right? This, my competitor, I became friends with him and I said, Jim, now his store was twice as big as mine and he was doing twice as much sales as I was.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was getting older and he said, I'm thinking about selling. I said, Jim, if you ever want to sell, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
And he come, and so between that time, between when I bought that and during that period of time, I had this wise idea of opening a restaurant. I should have had my head examined. So I opened a restaurant in the mall, right? So my space is here, Chick-fil-A, right next to Chick-fil-A. Worst mistake anybody can ever do is open a restaurant next to Chick-fil-A.
The highest margin business in the food business, Chick-fil-A.
So anyway, so I had this bright idea of opening a salad restaurant, right? So I called it Salad Days, the best days of your life. Yeah. And it was a great, we had a great menu. We had, everything was great. The challenge was nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted to eat Chick-fil-A. They wanted to eat Chinese or they wanted to eat a hamburger. Right. They're not going to eat.
Nobody wants to be healthy when they go to the mall. Right. It's Cinnabon time.
Right. So I worked that business, open to close for 9 months, made $0.
Wow.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of 9 months, my next door neighbor, which is in the mall, he had a Greek restaurant, right? Yeah. And I said, I'm fixing to close this sucker down. He said, no, I'll buy it. What do you want for it? And I said, what do you give me? He said, I'll give you 15 grand. I said, sold. Give me the 15 grand. So he gave me the 15. I sold it. The next day, I went over to the other mall and I said, Jim, I'm ready to buy your business. And he said, great, 140 grand. Right. So I took some money
without seeing his numbers, or did you already?
No, I already knew his numbers. Remember, I already knew his numbers because his store was twice the size of mine.
Yeah.
Right. So I had 800 square feet. He had 1,500 square feet. He had 700 items. His store was busy from open to close 7 days a week.
Yeah. So
I purchased that. So my income went from 50 grand to 165 the next year.
Yeah. And was you were basing his numbers upon your numbers and say, hey, he's got twice the size, twice the revenue, et cetera. Did those numbers match out when you saw them?
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He did. He was doing 500 grand a year. I was doing 250. So combined, we were doing 750. So by combining the stores, I was able to order bigger inventory, which got me a lower cost.
Yeah. You increased your margin.
Right. So my margins were better. I mean, think about it. You buy a gumball. You sell that gumball for $0.25. You pay 2 cents for it. There's no better margin than gumball.
How long do those last? Gumballs last on the shelf?
Probably 6 months.
6 months in the storeroom and the shelf. Do they have to be cooled or
no? Just room temperature. 70, 80 degrees, something like that. But no, and so one of the things I did to grow that little business is I put, you had the retail store. So in the mall, you had spaces that you could rent, right, and put gumball machines. So I had a guy build me carts, right? And so I put gumball carts about every 50 yards throughout the mall, right?
Did that cost you for that retail space?
Say it again.
Did that cost you for that space?
Of course. There ain't nothing free in a mall.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
So the way it worked, let's say I brought in $1,200 a month from each cart, right? So my cost of goods was probably $100, maybe 150, but the rent is where they got you, right? Yeah. They wanted 50% of your revenue.
Yikes.
Right?
Yeah.
50% of your revenue. So I netted about $600 a month per cart, and I had 10 or 12 of them, right, throughout the malls. And so that was another way to increase revenue. So we just did we learned a whole bunch of stuff about retail because of the candy store. A lot of people look down and said, dang, Don, how can you
like it? Yeah. Did you
Huh?
like being in retail and candy, B2C? Did you like it?
Well, yeah, we love kids, my
Yeah.
wife and I. So we love kids, and we got to spend a lot of time around kids. I got to hire kids, so all my employees were kids or teenagers, right? And so I love teenagers. I mean, a lot of people can't get along with them, but I was a teenager before too, so I know how to talk to them. And we had a great time. We did a lot of business, and one thing led to another. My son worked with me, and so my son around 2003 graduated high school, went to college. I paid his way through college, right? And when he graduated college in 2008, he said, "Dad," I said, "Son, what do you want to do?" And he said, "Dad, I want to be just like you. I want to own a business."
Yeah.
Right. And so this is 2008. So 2008, I caught the same guy that I bought the candy store from, right? A client of mine. He started Billy Sims Barbecue.
Billy Sims, you talking about the running back?
Yes,
Yeah.
Billy Sims, 1978 Heisman Trophy winner for University of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeff, my buddy, my client, him and Billy were good friends. So Jeff started a barbecue business, and he used Billy's name, Billy Sims Barbecue. Okay, it was unbelievable. He had a 1,500 square foot space. He took the money that I sold the candy store. Remember the first one?
Yeah.
I bought it for 112,000. He took that $112,000, opened up Billy Sims Barbecue, 1,500 square foot, little hole in the wall joint, right? First day of sales, $6,000.
Yeah.
First day, out of 1,500 square feet.
Yeah.
And it exploded. I mean, it absolutely exploded. So from 2004 to 2008, Jeff built 5 locations. Okay. So I know all this because he's my client, right? So we'd have
He
conversations.
was your client at Primerica, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. I had his business. I took care of his insurance and investments, stuff like that. So the bottom line, right? When he got ready to franchise, the first guy he called was me. And he said, "Don, I'm ready to franchise." And he said, "You want one?" And I said, "Well, I know the numbers. Yeah, I'll take one. I'll be your first franchisee." So I was Billy Sims Barbecue, first franchisee in 2008.
Wow. Yeah.
So my son graduated college, University of Oklahoma State University at Stillwater, and he had a degree in business. Right? He wanted to own a business. So I said, "Son, you're now Billy Sims Barbecue. You're the operator." So we trained him on how to run the business. He went, worked for the company for a little while, and then we bought an existing location of one of the 5 that he already had.
Yeah.
Okay. So we bought that business, and at that time, Jeff was cash flowing probably around 10 grand a month at that location, net in the pocket, off of about 60,000 revenue. So about 60,000 revenue, cash flowing about 10.
Yeah.
Okay. So we bought it, and including he took out 8 for the franchise fee. So just remember, we just lost 8% for the franchise fee.
Yep. Yep.
You with me? We cash flowed 17 grand our first month off of 70,000 in revenue.
So far, it looks like a good investment on capital.
Very, very good, especially when I started with no money. Now, a lot of people say, "Don, you can't do a no money down business." Well, yes and no, right?
Yeah.
The way I structured that deal, he wanted 140,000 for that location, right?
Yeah.
So I said, "Jeff, I'll tell you what, you carry 40, I'll pay you back over 12 months, right? At market interest rate, whatever it was, 5-6%. I'll borrow the other 100 from my SBA lender, right? I already had a good reputation with her. So I borrowed another 100 grand from her, from the bank. So I had zero money in it. But remember, you got to have operating capital. You can't just start out with zero money.
But let me go back to the SBA part. She didn't have a requirement for, history of the business? I mean, how old was that
Well,
business?
yeah. She had a requirement, and I, obviously I gave her the books. We had 5 years worth of history
Oh,
on that.
okay, 5 year. Oh, it already. That's right. So it already.
Yeah, so we gave her the history, and but besides, you got to understand when you use SBA at that level, at that small level, you're guaranteeing that personally. They got your house, they got your car, they got your firstborn child, they got everything. You
Yep,
ain't gonna
yep.
get out of that.
That's scary. I mean, that to me, like a business running for 10 years and it's manufacturing, that is a low risk. But then you do an SBA on a restaurant, man, yeah, that's scary. I had a buddy that did bankruptcies for business bankruptcies, and he said 99% of people, my clients, are restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a very, very tough business. However, if you have a system and you have a good product and you take care of your people, right? A lot of people don't understand when you have a restaurant, you have to look at the people that's going to be working in the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
If you open the restaurant in an area and it's a high dollar restaurant, you open that restaurant in an area where there are no average folks, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get any employees to come to work because they have to drive miles and miles and miles to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to make sure, and that, scope is to make sure that there's places for the guys to live, because your workers are going to be 19, 20, 21, 22. They're going to be pretty young folks, right? Because they're working in a barbecue restaurant.
Like cops working down in downtown. They can't afford to live in New York City where it's $5,000 a rent for an apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you gotta keep that in mind, right? So I always looked at the people, because man, I came from the bottom. I mean, ain't nobody was lower than I was. So I came from the bottom, and I remembered what it was like to wash dishes. I remembered what it was like to mop the damn floor. I mean, I understand what they go through. So we had a very good team. And so the next opportunity, right, was if you want more, you have to open another location, right?
Yeah, because it caps out, right? I mean, it's
Well,
not like
you got
say, hey, let's put more dollars in and we'll get more revenue. There's a ceiling.
No, there's a limit. I mean, again, the location it's location driven. You've got a certain number of customers that you're going to attract, right? And you're going to get an average. You're going to hit an average. So our average is around $70,000 a month. You break that down per meal. Most of it's lunch. So 60% of your revenue is going to be at lunchtime. You're going to have about 100 people come through the line at lunch, right? And then the rest, 40%, is going to come from the evening or catering, right? The other 40% of your revenue. So you got to make sure that you do a damn good lunch and you take care of those people. We got to know the customers. The team got to know the customers. When they walk through the door, we already knew what they want. Oh, you want the Heisman. Oh, you want the rib. Oh, you want the chicken. Oh, you want the pork. So we knew exactly what the customers want, because these people kept coming back and coming back and coming back. You with me?
Yeah. When did this was going into 2010, 12. When did you sell the candy business?
Okay, I'm continuing to operate the candy business while I'm opening restaurants.
Yeah.
You follow me? So the candy business is still operating. I got good managers in there, good employees that know what they're doing. The other thing I did was I went to cameras very quickly. I found out if you don't have cameras, your product will disappear off the shelf.
Yeah. In the candy business, I bet. Right.
Yes, it will disappear. So you have to have cameras, and you have to check on people. You have to call them up. Hey, what are you doing? And they're going, well, nothing. Well, I see you on your phone. Didn't I tell you to put that phone in the back? You can't have the phone on the sales floor. Go put your phone in the back and wait on those customers and make sure you take care of them. So that's what the camera did for me. It allowed me to see what the employees were doing.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So, and we did the same thing in the barbecue business, right? Cameras everywhere. I could see meat going out the door. If I seen stuff happen and it wasn't supposed to be happening, they got the dreaded phone call from Don. Okay. And so the next opportunity was, right, I went to my son. I said, son, You want another restaurant? And he goes, yeah, Dad, I'm ready for another restaurant. So I went out, found me a location, negotiated the lease with the landlord. I like to do business with landlords that are small, mom and pop type guys. I don't like big corporations. I hate Simon Malls. I hate any mall operator. They'll rip your head off. They don't care if you make it or not.
Yeah, they just want that percentage of your revenue. Yeah.
That's exactly. They want half of your business. They want you to work for them, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I opened the second location 6 months to the day later. And then every 6 months, I opened a new location, and I did that 4 more times.
Yeah.
So from 2008 to 2010, right, we started with one location with about, 600,000 a year, 700,000 a year, to 5 location and $3 million a year.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So we did that in 2.5 years, working our asses off.
Right. You're around the clock at that point, right? Almost.
You bet. I was 24/7, just like the Navy.
Yeah.
So
what happened after that? I mean,
that got us to 2010. Okay.
Yeah.
So 8 to 10. You got to remember what was going on in 2008. We had a new crash.
Yeah, that was the crash. Yeah.
Yes, everything crashed. So everybody told me I was nuts to go open restaurants. I said, yeah, I probably am, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I kept doing it. So in 2010, we had 2 candy stores, 5 restaurants, right? So we had 7 retail locations operating. Between all of us, we're doing probably $4 million, cash flowing probably $750, somewhere in there. Okay. So in 2010.
Did you enjoy it? Like you're totaling up and I go, hey man, we're great. We're doing great. $4 million. But did you enjoy being on call, driving to restaurants or driving to the mall for the retail store? Did you enjoy it?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, on one side, could I be doing something else? Yeah, I probably could. I could be working for American Airlines for 50 grand a year and dreading every damn day. Yeah. I could do that, right? But that's not an option. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was exciting because we were building stuff, man. We were rocking and rolling, making lots of friends and, making lots of money. And so 2010 rolled. Now, check this out. So my Woodland Hills store, which is the big store with Simon Malls, it came up for renewal, lease renewal, right? So I started negotiating the lease. My rent at that time was $9,000 a month. Okay, one store, $9 grand. They said, we'll renew for you, Don, 10 years, but we're going to renew at 12. So you're going to be paying 12 grand a month, and then we're going to bump it by 4% every year. Oh, and by the way, you got to do a new build out. And I said, what do you mean? They said, you got to tear everything out, all of your fixtures, the floor, the walls, the ceiling. I want a whole new look in your store, new signage on the wall outside. And so I did the math on that. That was 250 grand. So I did the math and I said, it don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Why would I renew for that? That's ridiculous. So I tried to sell it. Right. So I had this guy on the hook that was ready to buy it, right, for 150 grand, about what I paid for it. Right. And I had 2 years left on the lease. And so he started dragging his feet because he knew, right, that he did the math himself and realized, shit, there's no way I can make money on this. Right. Right. So he backed out of the deal. So what I did, rather than sell it, I said, well, you know what? I'll do the math. I can get 150,000 a year for 2 years. That's 300. Or, right, I'll just let the sucker go. In other words, I'll go to the end of the lease and hand the keys back to Simon. So that's what I did. I ran it 2 more years, handed the keys back to Simon, right? And so in 2011, I left that candy store. My other candy store that I started with, right, I sold it for 85 grand.
Yeah.
The reason I sold it for 85 grand, when my lease was up there, I moved because they wanted to renew that lease. And I said, I'm not going to renew it. I said, can you give me a temp? give me a temp space. They said, oh yeah, we can put you down the hall down there in the corner for about $1,500 a month. And I said, well, that people already know where I'm at, so yeah, I'll do it. So I moved everything down the hall, to the other end of the mall, the dark side of the mall, right?
Yeah.
And lit that sucker
That's where
up
Spirit Halloween goes.
So we moved down there, and the sales were about the same, but the cash flow was much better because I didn't have $5,000 a month in rent.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So I sold that in 2011 for $85,000, and then we let's see, we looked at the 5 restaurants. We took a hard look at the 5 restaurants. Out of the 5, 2 of the 5 were doing more. In other words, they were carrying about 70% of the profit.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yep.
So 70% of the profit was coming from 2 restaurants. The headaches were coming from the 3 restaurants that wasn't pulling their own weight.
Yeah. Why were the headaches? What were the headaches caused by?
Employee problems, lack of customers, just bad locations. We went out into the suburbs. We went into the small towns, 20, 30,000 people, right? And so we tried to get out in those small towns, and we found out unless you're an owner operator in the store, you're not going to build the sales that you need in those small towns, right?
Yeah.
So the 2 stores that were rocking were Broken Arrow and Tulsa, or in Owasso, which was 2 suburb towns, right? But they were very good towns, meaning that they had good people, lots, 100,000 or more people. Good, all the logistics was there that you needed to have. So what I did is I sold those 3 stores for $350,000.
Yeah.
I just got my money back. I basically got what I got in those stores. I got it back. Okay.
And who bought those? A new guy, or did the franchisee?
Well,
franchisor. Yeah.
When we started with the franchise, there was only 5 locations. I built an additional 4. That brought us to 9. He sold off quite a few, and I think today they've got about 50. So back then we were all in just Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we had about 10 locations in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You with me?
Yep.
And so I sold those 3, which was let's see, Claremore, Sepulpa, and East Tulsa. I sold those to other operators that wanted to own and operate just one. Make sense?
Yep.
So I sold those, and then I took that $350 and I semi-retired. I moved to Florida.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yeah, this was in 2012. Moved to Florida. Walked on the beach every day, went boating, went fishing, done all the crap that you're supposed to do when you're retired. And after about 3-4 months of that, I lived on the water, had a boat in the backyard. After about 3-4 months, I'm bored stiff.
Yeah.
So we go back to Tulsa. We moved back to Tulsa. We still had a home there. And the wife went in for her annual, exam, and she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, sorry.
So I took the next year off. So the whole year of 2013, from 12 to 13, I took it off just to take care of my wife.
Yeah.
So at the end of 2013, or close to the end, I think it was August, I found another business, and it was a convenience store. So I had negotiated that deal, and I got the numbers where I needed to get, where they needed to be.
Where did you find that? It was a broker site, listed site?
Yeah, it was on, like Biz Buy Sell, something like that.
Okay.
So when I seen the numbers, and that's it. That's what I want. So I called immediately and said, I'll take it. No negotiation, no problem.
So what did you like about the gas station convenience store, the numbers? I mean, it's such a small margin, isn't it?
Yeah, but you don't understand. All right. This is a gas station convenience store in a town with 2,000 people.
Okay.
That's it. 2,000 people. There's only 2 gas stations in town.
That's Haskell, Oklahoma. So
Haskell, Oklahoma. 2 gas stations in town.
Yeah.
So long story short, the numbers were he was doing 1.2 million inside sales inside the store.
No way. Really? In a
At a
town of 2,000?
and listen to this, at a 28% gross profit. 28%. So he's giving his shit away. He's giving the stuff away. His gasoline, he was selling at a 20-cent profit per gallon.
Yeah.
Right. And when we bought the store, he was doing 700,000 gallons a year. So the store was cash flowing 300,000, which was more than my 3 restaurants.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, I just
Right.
leapfrogged up here. Yeah.
Right. So we acquired that. And
How'd you acquire it? SBA, bank? What's the deal?
No, what I did is the purchase price was $888,000. I had 350, right? I told him I'd take over his note. He had a note on the building itself. So I bought the real estate too. So I took over the note on the building, right? And then I gave him like 225,000. And then he carried the rest.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
So out of my 350, 225 went to him. The rest went in the bank to operate for operating capital. And obviously at that time, I'm taking care of my wife. So I called my son. I said, "Son, you got to take this convenience store." "Okay, Dad, I'll take it." So he took it. So we had our manager, right? We already sold our candy stores. We sold 3 restaurants. So we only had 2 restaurants left, right?
And those are the cash flow positive stores.
Those are the cash flow kings. They were the top 2, the top 2 stores in Tulsa. Okay, besides the original location. So they were cash cows. And I had them managed. I had managers in both, and I had a general manager that went from store to store to make sure everything was going.
Yeah.
So we acquired the gas station, convenience store, and we operated that for 5 years. So from 2013 to 17. Okay. We bought it for 888. We cash flowed about 300 grand a year. We kept building on that. We got our sales up to about 1.5 million inside. We got our gallons up to about 1 million gallons a year at 20 cents 20 cents margin. So that store was making $300,000 in the pocket every year out of a town of 2,000 people.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
That's fantastic.
And then we sold it for 1.5 million in 2017.
Yeah, so 700,000 increase over 5 years. That's good.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So we made 1.5 million operating. We made another million or so selling. So that was a very good investment.
Yeah.
And then 2014, again, this is while we still have 2 restaurants, we still have the convenience store. Being a serial entrepreneur, I couldn't stop looking at business. So I seen another one pop up, right? And it was a remodeling company. And it was out of Oklahoma City, which is about 1.5 hours away from Tulsa, right? And it was making 400,000 a year off of revenue was about 1.4 million, 1.5 million, and he was making 400 off of that.
That's great margins.
And so I called on that and said, "I'll take it." Right.
It was a broker site or
another broker out of Dallas, Texas, another broker. So I said, "I'll take it." And I tried to get the seller to carry some of it. He didn't want to carry nothing. He wanted his money. But he only wanted 400 grand. That's it. 400 grand.
He was taking home 400,000, but he only wanted 1x.
And the reason is him and the wife were splitting.
Oh my God. Top 10 reason people are motivated to sell. One of the top 10s. Yeah.
Yes. So they couldn't get along. They were fighting, throwing chairs at each other all day. It was a bad situation. So, so when I bought the business, I had to replace her immediately. So she was accounting. She did all the books. So I hired before the business closed, myself and the guy that I bought it from, we both interviewed people, gals, that was going to take that job, and we hired a gal that worked for a window company that went bankrupt downtown, and she'd been in the business forever.
Yeah.
So I liked her. I hired her, and one of the best things I ever did.
He was the designer and she was the accountant.
No, he's the salesman.
Oh, he was the salesman. Who was doing the design stuff?
There's no design.
Oh.
This was a window.
Oh, a window. I thought it was like sorry about that. A remodeler. I thought it was.
No, it's a remodeling. It's considered a remodeling company.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it's a marketing company, and so we marketed windows.
Yeah, there's not a lot of design. You like it.
So the bottom line is, I'm good at sales, so I bought it because of my skill in sales, and we bought it August 16th, I think, 2014. Okay, so August, September, October, November, December. By December, we had already made all of our money back.
400. You already made your 400,000. So where did the money come from that you put? Huh?
Selling windows.
No, I mean to pay the guy. To 400,000.
Oh yeah. Here's the if people want to know how do you buy a business, no money down. Here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Number one, you probably have done some. You probably had a history.
Yeah.
In other words, you've got a proven track record. You don't just walk in and buy it. You have a proven track record. So I had a banker, right? I had a banker that I developed a relationship with, and I borrowed some money from him from my barbecue restaurants. Okay. So when I seen this business, I immediately sent the numbers to him. And I said, "Hey, Scott, did you get those numbers?" "Yep. What do you think?" And he said, "It looks good, Don." I said, "I want all 400. I want you to give me 400 cash." "Okay, no problem." So he cut me a check for 400 cash. I handed that check over to the seller.
Who was this, Don, that gave you 400? Yeah.
My banker.
Oh, he was your banker. He just lent you the $400,000.
Yeah, of course. With you know how it is. They got to jump through the hoops and do appraisals.
Yeah,
and all
but
that
it wasn't an SBA loan. It was just a regular loan, right?
No, it wasn't.
It was an SBA.
loan.
Okay.
Yeah, SBA. And they were having some kind of special at the time for veterans. So I got it in no fees, or they didn't kill me. They didn't kill me on the fee part.
Yeah.
Because normally they're going to hit you 3%, of whatever you borrow right off the bat.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got the 400 there, gave it to the seller, and commenced learning the window business. I took the 350. Right, remember the 350 I used to buy the convenience store, right? So I needed operating capital. So I took 100,000 out of the convenience store, and I opened a bank account with that to operate the window business.
Yeah. Did they take the operating capital out of the business?
Say it again.
Did they the Windows remodeling? Did they take the operating capital or the cash and account out of the business when they left?
Everything. Yeah, I got nothing.
Okay.
So when the deal closed, he was smart. When he closed, he took all of his work in progress, and he ran that himself.
All the AR, yeah.
Yes, I didn't get any of it. So I had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
But think about that. So I started from scratch, and at the end of 5 months, I had 400 in my bank. Yeah, I had 400,000 in the bank account.
Well, that was a good. Did you pay off the loan?
Now here's what I did.
Yeah.
So I'm paying rent to him for the building. You follow me?
Yeah.
So 50 grand a year, I'm paying rent to him. So I'm thinking 50 grand I'm paying out every year. I got nothing to show for it, right? Why don't I just go build me a new building, right? So I look down the street, 2 blocks down the street, there's a nice hard corner, and there's about an acre of land for sale. You with me?
Yep.
300 grand. So I went to, I did a sketch for myself. I just sketched out a little plan, and I figured I could build the biggest building I could build on the smallest lot was 13,200 square feet. I only needed 6,000 for my business.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yep.
So I took the plan, my little sketch on the napkin. I took it to my, found an engineer, gave it to him. He drew up the plans for the lot. You got to have the lot, the parking area, and all the stuff the city requires. And so he did all that design for me. And so over the next year, I used my own cash flow and built the building cash.
Yeah.
Okay. So within a year, I moved the business from the existing building that I was paying 50 grand a year for to the new building. And I had over 6,000 square feet to rent.
Yeah.
So
now it's just not a lost expense. It's an expense that's actually appreciating in value and a tax deduction.
Well, think about it. I'm going to have to pay taxes on $400,000 for the first damn year. So 2014, I was going to have a hell of a tax bill.
Yeah, you were.
So I took that money and I plowed it in to the real estate. You with me?
Yeah.
And then I took the profits that I would have had to pay taxes on, and I plowed all that back into the real estate. So at the end of the deal, 2016, I had a building that was appraised at 1.5 million. And I moved into that building. And then I leased it up, right? So leased it up, the NOI, including my rent, was $131,000 a year.
Yeah, now it's cash flow positive. Yeah.
Right. So I had an asset that was paying me, right? And I was being able to deduct my rent. So I paid myself my rent, which otherwise I would be paying some other landlord. So I got tired of being the landlord. You with me?
Yep.
So I learned how to build a building. I learned how to deal with the city, and that ain't no small feat. And I learned how to attract tenants. I learned how to do build outs, and I've done lots of build outs with my barbecue restaurants. It was a great experience. So the end game, and again, this wasn't planned. I mean, I'm not no rocket scientist. I'm just
How's your wife through this though? What's going on there?
What do you mean? Oh, from the cancer? Yeah. So I'm sorry. 1 year later, right? She was diagnosed free. It's gone.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she went through chemo. She went through radiation, lots of prayer. We believe the Lord healed her. And to this day, 10 years later, she's cancer free.
Fantastic. That's great news.
So, like I said, when I started out, all I wanted, and I see all this all the time. I see these people and they go, oh yeah, I got, I'm worth, $50 million, $100 million. And I'm sitting there, I feel like such a dud. I look at it, God dang, how do they do that? And then I look back at myself and I'm going, well, from a good old boy from Oklahoma that don't know that's come here from Sikkim, to go out and do what I did, that's not bad. We did okay. And, so I look back at that and I think, the end result, here I am now retired, right? I retired in 2019. I sold the business. I didn't tell you that. I sold the business.
Yeah, you sold it, I see, in August 2019. Yeah.
Correct. I sold it for $1 million. I sold the building for $1.5 million. So that one investment that I spent no money out of pocket, none of my own money, turned out to be $2.5 million.
Ah, fantastic.
And then you add in all the others. So, the net worth is right where I needed it to be. I figured if I could just have an income of a couple $100,000 a year for the rest of my life, I think I'm going to be sitting pretty.
Yeah.
And so here we are in Florida. I live in a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood. I owe nobody nothing. Everything's paid for. I have more income coming in than I can spend. I have all the free time I want. If I want to sell a business, I can sell a business. If I don't want to sell a business, I'll just tell them, you know what? I can't help you.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of my story.
And where's your son? Where's your son working now?
Okay, so what happened when we sold the business in 2019, my son he built himself, by himself, he built him a ranch in Oklahoma. So he's got a, big ranch, 30 acres, beautiful home, 3,000 square foot home. He built it himself. He's got a 1,200 square foot barn, built it himself, a couple more outbuildings, horses, all of that. So when we sold the business, he's basically, 30, I don't know, 30 some years old, and $1 million in the bank, more than $1 million in the bank. And so we relocated. We sold everything we had. We sold our home in Oklahoma. We sold our home in the Philippines. We sold our home.
Where did this home in the Philippines come from?
Well, during that 2008, I missed that, but back in 2008, when I opened when I bought the restaurant, the Billy Sims Barbecue, and I put my son in there, at the end of that 6 months, right, we needed a vacation, right? My wife's Filipina, so we went to the Philippines. And while we were in the Philippines, I bought a property.
There you go.
Yeah. And that property was on the cliff overlooking the ocean. And so I had a cliff 140 foot straight down was the ocean, right? So I built my house there, and over the next 10 years, I developed that property and made it into a resort.
Lovely.
So we had a great time. Every year we'd go to the Philippines, spend about 3 months a year there. And because I had multiple businesses and I had a good son that was taking care of everything, I could take off.
Do you have any other kids or just that son?
No, we have an older son, but he's not a business guy. He just business wasn't for him.
Right.
So it's not for everybody.
Yeah. So what are you doing now? You're kind of a business investment banker, realtor?
Well, no, what I am is a business broker. So I created a company called Blue Collar Way. And basically it means that I started at the ground up. So when I look at businesses, I like to work only with blue collar businesses. I'm not a white collar guy. I don't like offices, even though I've done that, but I would much rather work with a blue collar guy and show them how to take their business and not only basically do what I did. Instead of paying rent, get your own building, get some tenants, build it up. When you sell your business, you can either keep the business and live off the cash flow from the real estate, or you can sell the real estate, invest that money, in the market, get, dividends and stuff coming in from that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my specialty.
If somebody was to say, hey, there's a business in one of your properties, would you tell the seller to keep the real estate or sell the real estate?
Depends on the real estate.
Yeah.
Now see what you haven't heard and what most people don't hear is all the challenges. Now, if you think I went through all of that with no challenges, you need to.
No. Every part of this is a challenge.
It's
some people it's bigger than others. Yeah.
The stories I could tell, and I'm going to tell this one story just to illustrate. So the last deal that I sold, right, my American Quality Exteriors that I sold in 2019.
Yeah.
Guess what happened in March of the next year? COVID.
Yeah, COVID. Yeah, nobody's installing Windows. Yeah.
So I couldn't foresee that. I had no idea that's going to happen. Right. So COVID happens. The guy that bought my business. And here's the other thing: if you are ever going to buy a business, word to the wise, don't change nothing. You go into that business and you do exactly what that other owner had been doing. Unless, of course, it wasn't working. But if it was working, why would you change something that already works? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And a lot of the SBA lenders will lend on that only, like, look, you need history with this business model. And this is like a perfect example because I'm looking at this company that they were selling some equipment and they kind of changed their business model. And they're making a lot more money and they're higher price points, but the SBA lenders not going to lend on it because it's a basically brand new business model.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So picture this: COVID comes around, they shut it down.
Yeah.
The government shuts it down. He can't go into homes. He can't make any presentations. He can't do nothing. So for 2 months, no income, no revenue whatsoever, other than what he already had on the books. You follow me?
Yep.
So 2 months, no revenue. So basically, the people that were working for him, they got COVID, right? They got COVID. So one of them almost dies. So he's gone.
Oh, crap.
Right? The head of sales, he gets COVID. He's gone. So basically, his business disintegrated when COVID come around.
Yeah.
Now remember, I'm carrying the paper on this business. So I'm carrying, 700 grand. So I stand to lose all of that if that business is not successful.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It's a stressful situation.
So I was in contact with this buyer, right? Counseling him on what to do. He wasn't listening. He was doing what he wanted to do. I knew what his financial situation was. So what I did is I took that note for 700 grand and I went to the market and I found me a buyer that would buy that note. You with me?
Yep.
So he offered me a certain amount, and it was discounted, of course. That's how they're going to make their money. And we got down to the close. The day before the close on the note, he calls the guy, the seller. He calls the guy that has the business that I sold the business to, right? The guy unloads on him, tells him he's not going to make it. I think I'm going to go out of business. I think I'm going to shut it down.
Yeah.
So guess what?
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of people that had that panicked look in their eyes. Yes.
I don't get the note sold. So I'm stuck holding the paper. So now the seller or the guy that bought the business from me, he knows that I'm selling the note. He don't know that the guy won't buy the note. He don't know that yet.
Yeah.
So I call him up and I said, listen, I know you know that we're selling your note. Yeah. I'm willing to offer it to you to the same terms as what I was offered. Guess what? He bought it.
Yeah.
I got my money.
Yeah.
So I got the money back, right? I obviously took that and made it useful. So I got out of that deal. I sold the building January of 2020, 2 months before COVID. Those tenants, there were 3 tenants in the building. The company that I sold, another hair supply company, and a gym. The gym went out of business.
Oh, yeah.
So the guy that bought my building, that money he was counting on didn't materialize, right? And the guy that bought my business, he was having problems paying the rent. So he had to renegotiate the rent. So now the guy that bought the building, that NOI is not there, right? So these are just some of the things that happen that you don't plan for, that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
And so these are things that you have to be aware of. And this is why I always said, just because you start making a little bit of money, if you think 100,000 is a lot, well, that's great, but don't go out and buy yourself a new car and a big house. Don't go out and show everybody how much money you're making, because you know what? Something's going to happen. And when it does, if you're not liquid, you're not going to be able to survive, and you're going to be one of the casualties. So that's what I did. I never took my money and plowed it into stuff that would make me, look good. I just kept putting it away, doing the best thing that I could to make it grow. And now, that I'm older, now I can pretty much do what I want because I'm liquid, and I don't have to worry about, making myself look like I make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I don't want anybody to know anything about making money. I did none of their business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather keep a low profile.
Good for you.
So,
yeah,
that's my advice to people, that if you're going to go out and buy a business, have a reason for buying it, and make sure you take care of your customers. That's the reason you're in business, is to take care of the people that are giving you their money. If they give you your money, you got to give them what you said you were going to give them.
Yeah.
You have to do that. If you're not going to do that, then you shouldn't be in business. So that's, just a couple little things that I think that I've had little success. What little I've had is because of that. Because of years ago, when I was a mechanic for American Airlines, I took my truck in one day because I had a brake problem. I took it into the local mechanic, right? His name was Perry Jones. And I took it in and I said, I need the brake job. And he said, okay, we're going to take care of it. So they did it, right? And so when I come to pick it up, I went out to the shop and I said, hey, did you turn the rotors on the front? Oh, yeah, we turned the rotors. No, you didn't turn them. Take the tire off. So they took the tire off. Sure enough, they didn't turn the rotor, right? So I told Perry, hey, Perry, you didn't turn the rotors. And he said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, make it right. Here you go. So he reached in his pocket, handed me $50. Back then it was $50. This is in the 90s. But that was it. I didn't have to pay for anything. Now I got new pads for the deal, but my rotors wasn't turned.
But he should have done it right the first time. Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But what I realized at that point, and Perry was a good guy, and I kept doing business with him for years because now I knew the guy was honest, right? And so that one little $50 gift back that he gave me back, right? I must have brought, because I love cars and I buy a lot of them. I probably bought 10, 15 cars over the next 10, 15 years. And I brought them all to him. So that little $50 probably made him another $20,000.
Yeah, repeat customers. Okay. You fixed him and got repeat customers. Yeah.
Right. So that's my, my advice to people. If you're going to be a business guy, make sure you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. I love it, Don. I really appreciate it. And we are up on the hour. So thanks for your service. Thanks for sharing your story. This is awesome. The Blue Collar Way. Look him up, everybody. Don Wilson on LinkedIn.
Thanks,
sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye.